Hello, anybody who's decided to tune into this. This would be one of the first podcasts or recordings we're doing with people in the industry we've got the utmost respect for. That might be a surprise to Ant, actually, me saying that. This is Ant Morse. We worked together at O2 many moons ago, and we've kept in touch, but we've come back really bashing our heads together well and truly on contact center AI. Some of you will know Ant's name from his brilliant book, I read before I spoke to Ant about it, which was fantastic. The future of us predicted a lot of things, particularly around contact center AI and AI. Ant, give us a bit more on it, if you would.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and thanks for having me along. So I wrote a book, actually wrote the book in 2015, talking about how AI might evolve, and not just the technology, but also the kind of societal impacts of AI. Now, at the time, 2015, I was getting a few raised eyebrows, some odd looks and interesting feedback, but putting it down into print was ultimately the kind of the career defining moment. And as you say, I was very fortunate that I predicted a lot of what we now class as every day, so mainly around generative AI and how we use technology to work a bit smarter. The interesting bit is the bit that's going to come next, this generative AI, this agentic AI, and the journey to AI assistance, which is slowly and gradually happening in the background as well.
Absolutely. I think we're lucky to speak to existing clients and hopefully future clients anyway, weekly. And since Christmas, I would say that the interest in understanding how you define an AI strategy and within a service environment, within a contact center environment, has become the major topic that we speak to people about. People aren't really wanting to understand how they actually implement it at the moment. What they're wanting to understand is how will it affect their business. Have you had the same? Have you had the same discussions?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've gone kind of full circle, haven't we? So it's kind of, AI's here, but I think we forget it's not new. It's been around for a long time, back to the 50s and before. And machine learning and deep learning has been, in every service we touch, whether it's the mobile phone networks delivering traffic, as we know intimately well, Matt, or whether it's Netflix making a suggestion. What this kind of generative AI then kind of brought, this is something else, what might this do? But ultimately, we're talking about business leaders. We're talking about people who, are responsible. I refer to it as we hold the pen. So,
yes.
We're not just going to kind of go, it's great, let's start to deploy it. So there's been this kind of caution of, well, what is it and how good is it and how reliable and how safe is it going to be? That then kind of got to that point where, there's almost been like a pause. And I think it was Harvard Business survey that said 80% of AI projects will fail, and then MIT came out and said, never mind, 95% are failing. And I think that was really quite reassuring, really, that we were doing our jobs properly. We weren't just saying, it's great, let's deploy it. We were thinking wider, we were thinking broader. But now we've kind of gone almost to that point where it's not just the technology that's matured and progressed, actually it's expectation. So we've now got customers across the piece wanting, expecting more because they're using this service. I was looking at some stats as well, where I think it said it took us 16 years to get to 100 million users of the mobile phone. 16 years. It took 7.5 years to get to that number for the internet. It took ChatGPT 3 months. So this technology that we might be a little bit nervous about, we're not quite sure what to do with it, we're using it. And we being the collective, society, everybody as consumers. So when you're looking at your brand experience, we're starting to bring some examples into play, some experiences that are good in other areas. And it's really kind of brought, at a boardroom level, it's brought AI into an almost an accelerated decision, a kind of a cusp of change. And I think that's so many different drivers, because as a futurist, I'm often asked, how do you predict the future? And I think some people think I just, have a crystal ball that I pull out, or I make a good guess. But actually, it's based on research, lots and lots of research. And the interesting thing with this transformation is all things are colliding, this kind of collision sequence of stuff, whether it's customer expectation, whether it's the technology's progressed, or whether it's, we're better at regulating it, or we're better at managing the risks, I think is where we are. So it's the topic at the moment.
So if I've been overusing this phrase of decision paralysis as far as 2025 was concerned, we've had existing clients and done work, small pieces of strategy work for new clients, and it was obvious they're very much stuck in position, this decision paralysis, as far as which direction do they go. Pressures around them of reducing CSAT, reducing ESAT, need to save money, and then there's the looming cloud of contact center AI that that their boss or whoever it is, or their customers have the future expectation to actually have in, especially BPOs. Where do they sit? How do they balance the books as far as replacing tier one agents, human agents who do generally transactional, one question, one answer with AI and still provide a great service. Where do you kind of sit on the speed of progression as far as not only in-house contact centers but BPOs as far as using contact center AI?
I think for me now, this is the opportunity. So, if, again, a bit like the Harvard stat, a bit like the MIT stat, the caution's good and sensible. Nobody wants to be reckless with this. And those that have been, I won't say reckless, that's probably unfair. Those who've been very ambitious early adopters have kind of, made some changes and reverted back. And I think, again, sometimes the headlines are blurred as to what they've actually done. And, I think it's still very positive progress. And, I salute their innovation as well. But I think now, we're trying to balance that. Do we still continue to sit on the fence and watch and be what I love as a term as fast followers, or do we kind of lead? And I think that's where most organizations are at the moment. Lots of projects in place, some pilots running, some early test beds, but ultimately not everybody's taken that kind of leap. As you say, this is kind of pause point, this decision paralysis. But I think the challenge is, and I'm a big advocate as we met in a corporate environment, we're not going to be pulled into this, it's the future and we must all jump. It's not our first rodeo. But I think we are at the point of, while we are cautious of it and to provide the right due diligence, we've got to move. I think the acceleration of the technology, but also society's adoption to it, is making this kind of crisis point. So the time is now. And I think one of the biggest challenges is you either hear, the kind of, and I speak for myself, the grey-haired expert, telling us the world's going to end and AI is actually a lot further advanced than it actually is. Or you've got, somebody saying our solution is the best thing since sliced bread and of course it will do everything you need to do. And the two in the middle somewhere is probably me and you, where we kind of go, well, let's have a conversation about all of that. We can't just there's no silver bullet, there's no golden answer for this. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's not to fear it. It's not to shy away from it. I don't think time will afford us that. I'm working on some projects with organizations at the moment where you have that kind of moment of, it almost kind of, it's quite interesting because you kind of think, if this works, if we do this way, they're going to be very, very difficult to compete with. Not just from an efficiency of technology, but efficiency of process, the transformation of the entire organization. So you think, well, if we build a business that, by using, and it's quite simple AI, again, it's not always these massive systems that, huge change and impact on jobs. Actually, careful automation, collective marginal gains is leading to some pretty lean firms that, again, going to be difficult to compete with. So I think that's the bit. If organizations are not doing this, that's the risk point, because others are, and they're going to transform industries and certainly customer expectation on the back of it.
I agree. I mean, we've agreed to partner, haven't we? We agreed last year, probably 6 months ago now, to partner and work together. And us as the delivery engine, behind you as the strategy engine, and that culmination of that two capabilities. I think what we've seen on last week, speaking to a client, is that they put a platform in and it was rushed. It was not well thought through. They'd put existing processes that hadn't been reworked, poor customer journeys, and they just used AI to speed them up and save them some headcount. And when we've gone through and done we've got soon to be released kind of publicly, we've got our maturity model around contact centers, of which contact center AI features. They were sub 50% on our rating, and they should have never gone near contact center AI. Now they've ended up in a bit of a pickle. But conversation last week, we saw some really quick routes of how to get out of that. So I think there's that there are those that have rushed into it and are seeing some gains, but what they're not getting is that massive return on investment. Is that something you've seen as well, or?
Yeah, and I think also as well, it's easy to think of AI as though it's this kind of add-on. If we think about that, what compelled me to write a book, because you don't make a lot of money out writing a book, and it's a heck of a process. Ultimately, it felt like a cause. It felt like I needed to make people aware this is not about a single AI system. This is a fundamental change to work completely.
Absolutely.
Yes, there'll be tools that fix things and change things and everything else, but collectively, this is going to change more than many can yet quite imagine. And we need to, as organisations, start to build and prepare for that. And again, these early pilots are great in lots of instances. They're allowing us to test it, get used to the systems, get used to what we need to do. But we must think far wider to the cultural change of work. The term Luddite is there because Ned Ludd, fought against the automation of mills in the early 1800s. We're going to be in exactly the same position again. And again, many may roll their eyes slightly at me on this, but the research, the data is there. This is proving to be a seismic change to what we do. It'll transform society. The 9 to 5 will disappear. We'll have Monday to Wednesday, and we'll work 10 until 2. Whatever the outcome is, the tools are too powerful to be ignored.
Absolutely.
They're progressing at pace. People want to use them and expect them to work in a certain way. So it's not just about a single bit of solution. It's about everything. And also as well, there's this kind of almost obsession with it losing people, or it's going to kind of take jobs. And listen, I would be foolish to say there are jobs it will take. Again, let's use history as a gauge. We no longer have families running around dangerous machines in mills. It's one guy pressing a button. The same will happen. But what necessarily won't happen is the massive number of jobs disruption that is being forecast. And the reason being is because we'll become that differentiator. So when you contact a contact centre, you're going to want quick and easy service. What's my latest bill? What's my transaction?
Absolutely.
Single bits of information, just keep it light, keep it simple, and I'm happy to speak to a bot. However, when something goes wrong or something's a bit personal, something's a bit emotional, I want to speak to a human. And that's the opportunity. And again, to think that we're just going to send people home, and I know, some organisations hit the press because they did that, but customers spoke very quickly and said, we don't like it. So, again, there's no playbook. There's no perfect playbook. We might have lots of ideas, and we can talk and share insights and everything else, but actually approaching this in the right way, hearing all of those things rather than this is the solution that's going to fit, is absolutely critical. That's the only way we're going to shape the future together on this.
I totally agree. We're lucky to work across kind of client-facing and BPO world and help those organisations improve. And last year we were talking very much around, you need to seriously think about your contact centre AI strategy, right? So you need to think about the strategy, how you're going to use it, how it's going to. But now what we're talking about, it's your organisational strategy, because CCAI will change it so strongly that you really need to think about how you deliver your overall service model. We're even looking at the psychology of how leaders should think differently, and how managers should manage differently with the tools that are available. Gone are the days where you're going to spend, hours and hours doing quality assessments. The tools are there to assist you. Gone are the days where an agent spends, hours of their working week writing up notes. Simple changes like that. So if we were sat here in December 26, what would your perfect synopsis be for this year, rather than kind of where we think we are at the end of 25, beginning of 26 now?
I think it's for people to build that, as you say, that wider strategy. Don't think of this just as a particular tool. If you said, imagine a time when, and paint a scenario of agent to agent AI. So, me and you will both have an AI assistant, whether we have that in 26 or 27, it's coming, whether it helps us do our job or whether it, suggests we go to the gym and stay out of the fast food restaurants, whatever it does. These are the prizes that big tech will furnish to us. If you look at the wider collisions of technology, they all may be very swan-like at the moment, but they're progressing these solutions into the cost return. Is there going to be is there an AI bubble? I don't doubt there's a bubble, but actually, is it a problem? Probably not, because we are starting to pay for these incredible services. I asked my forum how many people paid for it in July last year, and it was 8%. 8% said they paid for AI of some description. We asked that same question in November, 54% now pay for it. And some people are paying well over £200. So, it's only a bubble if it's artificially inflated. It's not. We're starting to pay, so we're going to reduce the bubble. We won't get into whether they're worth the money that they're valued at. We'll leave that to the city. But for me, we will start to use it. So this is happening again, another collision. So we've got to fast forward to what customers want today, and in 2026, to start to deploy and answer some of that, but certainly reshape work, but also be one eye onto the future as well to say, well, what does this next stage look like, where I won't call the contact centre. I'll just ask my assistant, Scout. I'll just say, Scout, £20 gone out of my bank. I don't know what it is. Can you help? Or my car insurance is up for renewal. Can you help? It's going to change how we engage with contact centres very, very quickly. And again, speculation, maybe the odd eye roll. This is not it's not in our gift. This is going to be provided by big tech as they look for their differentiator, as they look for their competitive edge, and as they look for their introduction for you to use their services. Why would you use OpenAI versus Gemini versus Claude versus Grok? If somebody offers you, a better service, a better solution, you'll use it. They're fighting for our attention, and ultimately our wallet comes quite quickly after that, and the services will happen, and they'll all impact the way we do things. If it takes time, if it's a bit mundane or a bit repetitive, we'll use AI. Now, the other thing that often comes up in that kind of scenario is, but what about the data? Well, again, we can't kind of fight the tide of change. If we look at people's perception and cultural norms on this, actually, particularly in younger generations, they're quite happy to share quite a lot of data. They're saying, it's probably not as precious as I might have felt it was. And actually, they'll say, well, if you improve the service, you can have what you want. And ultimately, they've probably got quite a lot of data on us anyway. The best example I always share is how much data do you share with your mobile phone? Nobody really knows, but we do know that it takes 1.6 seconds to accept the end user agreement when you get a new mobile phone. So, we give up a lot of data in seconds just to get our phone working quicker without even considering the usage of that data. Same applies here. I think give them a great service, make things better, people will share more data, and ultimately, we don't always need to share. Again, we can do it in isolated engagements through things like AI assistants, which are no longer likely to happen. They're inevitable. It's just a question of when.
So the end of 26, you think there'll be an emergence of AI assistants, or they'll be more prevalent, and therefore companies need to react to be able to supply the response via bots to a bot?
Yeah, use this time now to be ready to service people better through AI services. Yeah. So certainly change the foundations, because this next stage is going to catch lots and lots of organisations out. Now, ultimately, it'll be, that fast follower term will still be there. But do we want to be fast followers? Do we not want to kind of lead a little bit on this and be different? Because it will inevitably happen, but it'll be the reserve of the early adopters. So me and you might have it, but my mum probably won't. But again, the corporate scale and focus that is the big tech, the magnificent seven of the tech world, they'll make it so easy for my mum that, eventually she uses it as well. So the only hope, if you're not going to follow fast or embrace early, is that, that my mum doesn't adopt this tech as quick as big tech might like to do it. And again, the example I give is the mobile phone. Apple didn't invent the mobile phone. They didn't invent the smartphone. What they did is they made it work. They made it work brilliant in a great design. And guess what? Whether you were 2 or 92, you could navigate this thing and make it work for you. That's exactly what big tech have learnt from many times over history, recent history. They're going to make this work so fantastically well. We've got people like Sam Altman and Johnny Ives building assistants, things like this Rabbit device. These are personal AI devices. They're not building them so he can ask ChatGPT a question. They're building them so that it can engage. With these things, you can order food, order an Uber to deliver it, all just by speaking to it. It goes from a neat idea into a practical reality to an inevitable service. What all the brands have got to do and organizations have got to do is be ready to service this, because it is going to change, how we interact. We won't do things the same way.
So here's the sales sell bit. So if anybody is watching this and thinks, yeah, we really need to pull our finger out and get ready for 26, early in 26, please contact us. Ant and I would be more than happy to grab a call with you and even start looking at your overall strategy driven by contact center AI. Ant, thank you very much. We will do more of these. I've genuinely found it fascinating. But to everybody else, we'll be releasing some more of these in the coming weeks with equally as interesting people talking about contact center AI. Thank you for watching.